Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Justy YouTube channel. Today, I will be talking about one of my favorite books in science fiction, The Foundation by Isaac Asimov. I hope you enjoy the video. Stick around for the end to hear my thoughts about the book. Here we go. Isaac Asimov was a very prolific writer that wrote from early 1940s all the way up into the 1980s, eventually passing in 1990. Just see what my notes say. 1992. He got his bachelor's degree in chemistry, he got his master's degree in chemistry, and got a PhD in chemistry alongside an honorific PhD from his alma mater. So the guy knew his chemistry. He was a science guy. He had been reading science fiction since he was about age 9 out of newspapers from his family's candy store. All that being said, I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time on the biography of it just because you guys have Google. But I want to focus on in this video the first book of what he considers to be his greatest work, and that's the Foundation series. So I want to focus on book one titled Foundation. This whole series, I should say, is kind of shrouded in this daunting fog around it. It seems way too sciencey, way too smart for the average reader to kind of pick up and discover for themselves. But what I want to really do in this video is demystify this book and kind of bring it down to the average reader's level and help them understand that it doesn't have to be complicated. Isaac Asimov was an incredibly smart man, but he wrote very down to earth. The things he writes, not even in just this series, but in his other ones, like he's writing about crime novels. There's romance, there's sciencey terms, and there's big plots to uncover, but it's all down to earth. It's all there if you're looking for it. The series itself, the whole Foundation series, contains 7 titles. There's the original trilogy, 2 sequels, and 2 prequels. But I only want to focus on that first book, Foundation, as it's the foundational book. Boom. I don't have sound effects. This first trilogy, though, was published in 1951, 52, and 53. I should probably show you that. I keep pointing to this. These stories had previously been released, though, as short stories throughout 1942 to 1950. Much of the themes in this story follow the downfall of a galactic empire as foreseen by Harry Seldon. He developed this way of predicting the future by looking at trends of massive groups of people. He used this technology to develop something called the Foundation, a new society that would lead the empire through a 1,000-year period of darkness. And the series as a whole will take a look not at specific moments, but rather how the society is evolving as a whole. Following the section in Foundation, the books will find their main focus in the development of the Seldon crisis, or fixed points in the plan that make sure they are following the rightly predicted path. I'm trying not to read off my script, but it's not working. The first book began as a series of 4 short stories titled Foundation, Bridle and Saddle, The Big and the Little, and The Wedge. These interconnected stories would be published as one book under Gnome Press with new titles: The Encyclopedists, The Mayors, The Merchant Princes, and The Traders, beginning with a new prologue titled The Psychohistorians, and this one was exclusive to the book. It kind of sets up everything. They were kind of just disjointed stories about different sections of history, but this one like It actually tells you who Harry is, which I don't know why he wouldn't just do that. But let's get into the actual book. Part 1 begins by introducing a mathematician by the name of Gale Dornick. He was a country boy who had never been to the city before, invited by a man named Harry Seldon. Gale travels across the galaxy to the capital planet of the Galactic Empire, Trantor. It's a planet wide city split into innumerable dome like structures that will be explored in much more detail in the prequels. After meeting Dr. Selden, Gale explores the city, returns to his hotel, where they are immediately promptly arrested and brought to trial alongside Dr. Selden, who is accused of anti Empire actions. Mathematician and psychologist Harry Seldon presents the truth. He is not anti Empire, he's anti anarchy. This is the route that the Empire is on. They have around 300 years to prevent a 3,000-year period of complete darkness. His plan, involving the Foundation to create an encyclopedia of knowledge, is set so that they can transform this period of 30,000 years down to just a mere 1,000 years. He does this by using psychohistory, which is able to determine the probable outcome of future events, as I've explained before. He argues that the path forward is to create the Encyclopedia Galactica, which will contain all the human knowledge needed to bring the Empire through this period of darkness. The Emperor wants to have Harry killed, but is advised that this would only create a martyr out of him, and so decides to have him and his followers exiled to the planet Terminus to develop his encyclopedia away from the Empire's capital. Little did Emperor Cleon the First know, Terminus was always the plan. And that is section 1. It leaves us with this nugget of hope that Terminus was always a part of the plan. Terminus was always where they were trying to get to. They had pulled the strings to get the Emperor to put them at that place specifically. And that's where our next section takes place, just 50 years in the future. Yeah, there's a massive time jump between section 1 and section 2 as the Foundation has started to get itself settled. Generations have now lived on this. It's icy, it's cold, it's a desert. They don't have a ton of resources. They're just focused on getting this encyclopedia put together. And the planet Terminus finds itself in a peculiar spot in the galaxy. It's right on the edge in this place called the Periphery. But as these 50 years have gone by, the Empire has started to degrade more rapidly, as Selden had predicted. Selden had passed away about 47 years prior, so right before they had transported over to the planet Terminus. So the Empire's degrading, Selden is dead, and now there are 4 barbaric kingdoms surrounding the Foundation. I gotta check my notes to remember what they're called. There's Anacreon, which is the strongest of them. There's Smyrno, Conum, and Darabo. These are all bordering the planet Terminus, and it's isolating the Foundation from the rest of the galaxy. The mayor-elect of the Foundation, a man by the name of Salvor Hardin, sees Anacreon as their greatest threat. They're barbarians, they're pulling resources, they're going to invade, but they've been isolated. Terminus has been isolated on this cold, desert, rocky planet. They no longer have easy access to trade because they've been cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Hardin and the rest of the board over the Foundation spend many chapters of this section arguing whether or not to treat Anacreon as an imminent threat, or to see them just as barbarians off in the wild. They come to realize that these periphery nations no longer have access to nuclear power, which was their main source of power in the Galactic Empire. So they have no way of generating enough power to actually do anything, really. But nuclear power is actually something that the Foundation is expertly skilled in. So they realize that they have an edge in this fight. It's also during this time that the board and Hardin discuss the founder, Harry Seldon. Surely Harry knew this would happen, right? Didn't he make this whole plan? Didn't he set it in motion? Doesn't he have the ability to predict the future? And also, there's a question asked that isn't really answered for a while. Why did Harry Seldon only hire one psychologist to work on the Foundation? We might get back to that one in another video because we're only focusing on the first book. So, fast forward some more time, and the members of the Foundation enter the vault, a locked room left by Selden with pre recorded messages that would only play whenever they've reached a certain point in time and a certain threat has been crossed. So they've kind of jumped over this hurdle that Selden knew was going to happen. These books have a way of kind of glossing over the actual events of a threat, but just telling you about them in hindsight, and then Selden just kind of saying, "Hey, I knew this was going to happen." And they're like, "You're a pre recorded message. I don't care." This is the first time that the vault has ever opened. And it's the first bombshell that Selden is going to leave with the people of the Foundation. The encyclopedia was never the plan. That's right, it was all a ruse. It was all just a cover to get them out to Terminus. It was a cover so that they didn't know what the actual plan was. The whole point of the Selden plan is to not know what the plan is. Because if they know what the plan is, then they're going to fight it the entire way. They know what the plan is, they will never follow it correctly. So they have to have this leap of faith to just trust in a plan that they have no idea the details of. They just have to follow the flow of time, and they have to face these threats all on their own. It is at this revelation that brings us back to Salvor Hardin. He knows that he has to do something about Anacreon to keep the plan moving forward, which brings us to section 3, the mares. Moving on to section 3 of the book, instead of witnessing Hardin's plan against Anacreon and the three other kingdoms, we're actually told about it in hindsight. See, instead of being invaded, Hardin brokered a deal between the nations. You see, Terminus was lacking trade. They had no resources. They had no food. It was all going pretty bad for them. So they said, if you don't invade us, then we will provide you weapons, scientific aid, and services in exchange for their well being. While this strengthens the enemy nations, it also places the Foundation as the life source of these kingdoms. Hardin doesn't need to attack because the kingdoms won't risk losing their stuff. This leads Hardin to give one of my favorite quotes from the entire series, and he has it actually written up on his wall. It says, "Violence is the last resort of the incompetent." And it really just speaks volumes to how important diplomacy, trade, how important these relationships are in politics. Violence is a last resort option. It's not your go to. Getting off my soapbox, what's even greater is the discussion that Hardin needed to set science up as this form of religion for these nations to take hold of it. The Foundation educates these tech priests in order to serve as ambassadors to the nations, in order to keep the technology in the hands of the Foundation. The nations are made to believe that if they touch the tech, it will stop working. So basically, don't touch it, call your local Foundation priest, and he'll come bless it and fix it up for you. And then God will love you because you have his nuclear reactor. That's really basically the main story of this section. Instead of conquering these nations by military might, basically enslaves them in this techno religion. Hardin has set up his techno religious state where only state sponsored priests can go and fix the stuff. The nations have become dependent on the Foundation for their survival. While it comes fast, this section ends with another visit from Selden, where he basically tells them, hey guys, everything went according to plan. Great job. He leaves them with what can only be described as, well, a prophecy. And he says, and never forget, there was another foundation established 80 years ago, a foundation at the other end of the galaxy, at Star's End. And this is where the chapter ends. Well, really, it ends with Hardin saying, not my problem, which I think is really funny. But this leads us into our fourth section. It follows a new key figure named Hober Mallow, who's a part of this group called the Traders. They believe that the economy and trade and brokering deals and taking risks and carrying technology out into the frightening galaxy, they believe that that is their role. They believe that that is how the Foundation should be set up as well. The techno religion that Hardin had set up is beginning to wither in the periphery. There's less belief in it, and there's a lot more curiosity, rather, in the technology that they are using. This allows the traders to take a much more practical approach to how they're selling Foundation items. They are master salespeople, taking advantage of those curious barbaric nations. While Mr. Mallow is out on a mission, trying to bring these deals to the barbaric nations, he actually comes across a remnant of the Empire, which was believed to have fizzled out long ago. This fragment is still very powerful, and they're not fooled by the Foundation's religion. They're not fooled by the lies that they are spreading about their technology to keep the barbaric nations in line. Hober recognizes this threat immediately, reports back to the Foundation, pleading for change. The Foundation, of course, accuses Hober Mallow of heresy, but he begs and he pleads and he successfully argues his point. The periphery doesn't worship the technology anymore like they used to. They just flat out need it. It doesn't matter what they believe in. All they believe is that I can't live without this, and only the Foundation has it and knows how to fix it. He argues that need and necessity are stronger than faith itself. And that's basically where this section ends. I mean, Hober is now kind of being elected as this merchant prince, which we will come to find in the next section of the book, which is called The Merchant Princes. The final section of this book begins with an unrecognizable foundation. Instead of being a pseudo church, they're now the puppet controlling the market economy. Entire worlds rely on the goods of the Foundation for daily living: washing, drying, cooking, cleaning, driving, basic needs, food growth, stability. It's all reliant on the Foundation. They've come a long way from being the broken scholarship ran outpost with no food and no trade. Hober Mallow stands out at the center of this new foundation, but not without its cracks. Out in the galaxy, the Imperial Remnant is still testing the Foundation's strength. On Terminus, there are religious fundamentalists who believe that they're falling into instability and chaos because they're not following the Selden plan. They want the religious control back. Mallow knows, however, that their religion only worked when the people were ignorant of their ways. They were ignorant of how they were being controlled. But they know better now. The galaxy has changed. It's time for them to change too. But back to the Imperial threat. Alliances have shifted, and the Remnant Empire begins gathering their fleets for battle. Mallow refuses to play the game by their rules. He prepares an attack in the background, though not a violent one. Hober Mallow stops everything. He stops food production. He stops repairs. He stops anything. The entire infrastructure of the galaxy comes to a screeching halt as Hober Mallow stops the market flow. No power systems, no tools, no luxury, no replacement parts for foundation made technology. Everywhere feels the absence of the foundation, even the Empire, who no longer has the strength to fight a decisive battle. The Empire never recognized its reliance on Foundation technology, thus resulting in its final push, its final withering away, its final goodbye. Or so you think. They actually show back up in the second book. But here they wither away. The Foundation goes through its crisis with ease because they stuck to the plan. The religious leaders at the Foundation relent their attacks on Mallow as they have no way explaining his success outside of Selden's plan. The ruling economy has now become the de facto ruling force of the galaxy, and that being the Foundation. And throughout this whole book, from beginning to end, we've seen follow the plan, follow the plan, follow the plan, follow the plan. Throughout this book, we've seen, but the plan's not working, or we need to return back to this or this. But it's this constant evolution of ideas, this constant focus on change and going with the flow of time that the Foundation is able to keep its place in the universe and continue to follow Selden's plan. And so I want to wrap up this video by giving you some final thoughts on the book. The Foundation is not only a masterpiece of science fiction diving into the themes of empirical decline, control, and faith, it also speaks very clearly to the world we live in today. There's political unrest everywhere. There's weak rulers in our nations. There's stagnations everywhere in the market, in technology, in growth, in personal growth. These are all signs of an empire's collapse, and they don't collapse loudly. I believe they actually fizzle out pretty quietly. The Galactic Empire in this series starts out as this monumentous thing. I think 12,000 years, this nation, this galactic empire, rules pretty successfully. And then, like that, they fizzle away. This last section, The Merchant Princes, shows that all it took was them to disregard the foundation, to disregard the plan, for them to just quietly fade away because nothing's there to take care of them. They don't get a great ending. They're just easily defeated. For Asimov, the solution to the declining empire was to trust in science, to bring the people through the darkness. For me, personally, I'm a Christian, and I believe that through Jesus, we live in God's kingdom today. We have hope today, hope in the future that we can make life here better. We can make life for other people better. We can lead people to Christ by being a light in the darkness. We live in the darkness right now. It doesn't mean abandoning the world, but acting as a light. Asimov himself was a devout atheist, but even he saw that collapse, that darkness wasn't the end of the story. He presented something to hope in, and that was Selden's plan. It was science will bring us through. And so I don't see him as controlling or presenting religion as a bad thing, or which I'm sure he actually is probably quoted saying it is. I'm not sure. I should have looked that up. But he has this sense of hope in a brighter future. And that was enough for him. He saw hope in humanity. He saw the goodness of humanity. He saw a spark that there was something worth saving in the Foundation. And that, I believe, is Foundation at its core. It's the people. It's all about how these people develop, how these people thrive, how these people coexist together in one space. And so you can disagree, but this is just what I get from reading it. It's my personal opinion. If I forgot anything in this story, or if I left out a specific detail, let me know down in the comments. And yeah, let me know down in the comments. I'll take a look at them. Yeah, tell me how I'm wrong. Leave a like on the video, and I appreciate you guys for watching. Have a good one.